entrepreneurship and social justice is our theme. And how lucky it was to get a call about 9 weeks ago, and less maybe, from Middlebury alum, Middlebury board member Garrett Moran, who proposed a project for what turned out to be 6 Middlebury students as an internship, but as he said the other day, it's actually, I believe, become a class. It's in the wheelhouse of this idea that through innovation, through social entrepreneurship, through getting to know yourself, above all, you can move forward in the direction of the right, moving in the direction of what should be done. And to the degree that we think about social justice here, at this college, we think about access, we think about opportunity, we think about privilege. So I think you'll agree with me that the project you're about to see in the next half hour, which is a brand new one, speaks to much of that. So it's my pleasure to introduce Garrett Moran.
Hi, everybody. I am a Middlebury 76 graduate, so I was here when this was swimming pool building. I'm also a trustee, so I've had a continuing engagement with the place. My purpose really here is to introduce my group. John said this is a class. I think that dignifies it. I'm definitely not a professor or even a teacher, so this is a project rather than a class, I would say. It's about lending a hand to some inner city kids in a way that combines sports with mentorship and sort of adult engagement with kids to help them see a bigger world. And the folks here at Middlebury, when we came up with the idea, and I was prompted by another trustee whose son is in the project, who you'll hear about in a minute. But some of the folks here were helpful in actually getting a group of 6 together who were appropriately, had the appropriate backgrounds to do the job, which is to say that of our 6 kids, we have 2 New York City posse kids, Barbara Afoso-Sumua and Spencer Salaver, who kept us on who from my perspective helped keep it real. And any projects that have boys and girls, I know that as a grown-up businessman, because sometimes boys forget things and sometimes girls forget things. Kyle Fink is the rest of them are jock guys, so it's sports and inner city. So we have very switched on young women, and we have 4 jocks from football and baseball and lacrosse and basketball. I don't know if that was intentional. As you will see, it's a high self-esteem group of guys. Kyle Fink is the baseball player who has been involved in this sort of for 10 years. Tom Montgomery from Texas is a lacrosse player. Danny Finch is a football player from Long Island, and Albert Nascimento is a basketball player. I guess some of you may know. He's kind of playing games these days, having a hard time showing up for class. Anyway, why don't you guys get up here and tell us your story? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Barbara, and we are here to introduce our J-term project called BASIS. It's currently our working name. It's Baseball, Academics, and Support Equals Success. Gary has introduced all of us, and we're going to be running you guys through a series of what we've been working on so far. We hope you guys have a lot of questions for us at the end, but we mostly hope that you guys enjoy our presentation.
So when we first started our January term, we kept coming back to this one question, which is, how do we take the original Outsiders baseball program, this group of young men that you see behind me, and it was a program that took 20 kids in the Bronx, played on the same baseball team, and kept them together throughout high school and got them all into college. We combined mentoring, tutoring, internships, and baseball. How do we take this original model, take the elements that we like and discard the elements that we didn't like and didn't work, to create our own model that we can implement, not only in the Bronx or New York City, but make it scalable to implement across the United States?
So we're going to start you off by telling you the story of the BASIS, of the Outsiders group. Who were they? Where did they come from? And how did this entire program begin? Halfway through our presentation, we're going to tell you the program for our nonprofit, where we're going, where we've been, and what we think is working and what we think isn't working thus far. And then we're going to end our presentation with our summer goals. 3 of us have been offered a summer internship with the Hearst Corporation in New York City this summer to continue our project. So we're going to tell you guys what we're hoping to do this summer.
Started out coaching about 8 years ago. My idea was to try to get back organized baseball to the Bronx. Give back, to the community where I grew up, because I knew that it was heading downhill.
In about 2002, we came back from Atlanta, Georgia, and my son began to play in the South Bronx with Coach Tony. I began to think, what would happen if we could keep these 20 kids together for 10 years? It's a long time in Bronx years. What could 15 people or so do if we could get teachers, counselors, lawyers, coaches, neighbors on the blocks where they lived? That's what we did.
Baseball was the hook, but our real purpose was to encourage as many kids as possible to finish high school in good standing and to go to as best a college as they could.
So the original inspiration of Bases was the idea of the outsiders. It was a pretty simple equation. You take 20 kids and you follow them for 10 years, and you have one team, one corporation, a couple schools, and most importantly, one singular goal, and that's for every one of those kids to graduate from college. And so that was both the inspiration and the aspirations for Bases.
So to bring y'all up to speed, what we've been up to this J-term, we started week 1 by reading excerpts from Paul Tuff's book, How Children Succeed. And it was actually great. It talked about different studies, and one of the studies that we found very striking was one that talked about how there's a group of kids who live in poverty or come from adverse backgrounds who believe that their future is set in stone and that their goals are oftentimes unattainable. And the study shows that if you take that same group of doubters, of kids, outside of the neighborhood where they grew up, outside of the poverty, and show them that, hey, there's a side of life that you're not seeing, and that in fact your goals and dreams are attainable. Those children go on to blossom both in and outside of the classroom, and oftentimes go on to be very successful later on in life. That's something that we certainly hope to instill in the participants of Bases. And it really hit home for us when that same week we got the opportunity to speak with 3 original Outsiders members. And actually they're all enrolled in 4-year institutions, with one of them slated to graduate this spring from Union College. And so we're really actually stoked about that. So we got to speak with them about elements of the program that they didn't like, elements that they thought didn't work, and what they would do to improve the model going into the future. The second week we went to New York City and had a very similar conversation with the Hearst Super Mentors, who again explained to us what we should do going forward with the program and how we can make improvements. That same week we talked with 7 different nonprofit organizations in New York about basically pitching them our model and receiving feedback about how we can tighten it up. The third week, we've been able to take a step back, that's this week, take a step back and analyze what we've learned so far, and we're presenting those results to you all today. Going forward into next week, we're going to be writing our white paper, which will, again, show us what we've learned so far and what we know, and then provide a roadmap going into this summer and address those open issues.
So as John talked about, last week we were really blessed to really go to New York and meet with a lot of different nonprofits. And we collectively believe that it's really important in order for us to go forward to meet with as many nonprofits as possible, to get as many ideas as possible, and to have them basically knock us off our high stools and tell us what they think will work for us and what they think won't work for us. We don't want to start this until we know that what we're doing is actually something that's relevant and necessary. So 3 of the nonprofits that we met with that we thought had a lot of great ideas that we want to implement into our program are Harlem RBI, City Squash, and I Mentor. City Squash has a really long selection process, so several months long, and they look at students' attendance, parental involvement, ability in the sport, and this criteria that they use is very, very, very rigid, and they use it to make sure that the students that they're selecting, because they're selecting them so young, are actually going to be participating in the program and are willing to spend their however long the process is to go through it and to commit to it. We think that's something that we want to implement into our programming as well. Harlem RBI talks about the inch wide, mile deep approach. And that's something that's struck a chord with all of us. And it's basically you take a group of kids, about 20, and you outlast them. You give them everything they need, after school tutoring, summer mentoring, baseball, and everything like that, and so that they're not distracted by the things that are more than likely to distract them if they don't have all these things. This is something that we want to apply to our program as well. iMentor has a mentorship program that we are going to mention more later on, and it's a program that we also struck a chord with all of us and we thought would be interesting to apply to our program.
So after we got back from New York, we started to put together our mission statement and our theory of change. And originally we thought this would be pretty easy. It was just, a couple short sentences. But at the end of the day, it actually turned out to be very, very difficult. And that's because your mission statement and your theory of change is really the holy grail for both any nonprofit or for-profit organization. And that's because when you're explaining your project to anybody, whether it be prospective funders, partners, employees, your mission statement and your theory of change say both what your goal is, where you're going, and how you're going to achieve that. And to that end, our mission was to use academics and athletics to get kids to graduate college and change the pet course of their lives. And so when we look at our theory of change and how we're going to do this, it all starts with baseball. Because we believe that baseball and other team sports instill its participants with performance character traits such as grit, self-confidence, determination, perseverance, and using those character traits really go a long way in terms of creating success later in life. And then the second idea of this BASES model is the school. And that's the cognitive ability. So, reading, writing, math, science. So those we want to partner with Catholic schools in the Bronx. Because we believe that they instill both the academic discipline and the physical discipline in terms of getting there on time, being dressed appropriately, that the kids we want to serve really can benefit from. And then finally, we have the corporation, which really makes our model unique. And the idea that the corporation shows the participants of BASES the kind of intangible, not cognitive, neither cognitive nor non-cognitive abilities. And that is the idea that you want to fuel these kids' dreams. And so you take a kid who has only grown up in a 3-block radius his entire life in the South Bronx, and you take him and you bring him 1 mile north to a gleaming corporation in 59th Street, right off Columbus Circle, and you show him what the other side of life is like, and you open that kid's eyes, that's something that can really drive him and really give jet fuel to his dreams. And so it might just start with in 7th grade, giving kids a pizza party at a corporation. But that will evolve later into internships, after-school mentoring. And so the idea is to create this community, this ecosystem, where participants are inside and have all 3 legs of this community with surrounding them and giving them this community for success and a pipeline that will not only take them through high school and college, but will benefit them for the rest of their lives.
So before I get into the logistics of things, let me just paint you a quick, let me paint you a quick picture. Imagine yourself as a 7th grader. You just finished your first, summer baseball season, and you're going on a field trip with your team. You're dressed up in your uniform, you got your jersey on, your baseball cap. You go down to Manhattan. You get to the Hearst Corporation building and you walk in. The first thing you see is a 2-story waterfall, and you're like, oh my God. It's like Christmas morning for these little kids. They don't know what just hit them. People are walking around in suits, looking all fancy, and they're in their baseball jerseys. They're just amazed and happy to be somewhere, where there's a lot of important people. You then take a 42-story elevator ride into a conference room where you're welcomed by a huge sign that says, welcome outsiders. You see pizza everywhere, snacks, drinks, and then you got a perfect view of Central Park. What a better way to introduce these kids to the corporate world. By bringing them to the Hearst Corporation at the end of their first season with us is what we're trying to do to introduce them into the corporate side of things, show them that there's a life outside of Bronx. From then on is when we go into high school. And in high school, truly, as you can see it in our graph, is truly the meat of our program, where the kids are able to see the three points of our program, where they'll see the academics, baseball, and the corporate side of things. So for the baseball, what we're trying to do is we're having a three baseball season in the year. What that means is they'll be playing baseball in the fall, summer, and in the spring. Along with that, we're trying to partner up with some different corporations, maybe even some already established mentoring groups, to provide mentorships for our kids after school programs, which would basically include college prep, mentoring, along with academic tutoring. alongside with that, once the kids get into their summer of their 10th grade, we would like to be able to put them in summer internships. And we believe that we have to wait until the summer of 10th grade because this is when they've established that high school maturity. They've gone past the freshman year, being excited to be a high school student and trying out new things. Now they're coming closer to their junior year, this is when you start getting serious. So I'm going to start trying to look at colleges soon. Why not come into summer internships and start seeing what the corporate world truly is like? From then on, we bring kids onto college, and this is truly what we're trying to separate ourselves from other programs and make us unique, where not only do we want to get kids into college, but we want to make sure that we get our kids to graduate from college. And by doing, we're going to try to do this by borrowing a little idea from the iMentor group, which they called Mentorship for the 21st Century. And basically what this means, if a lot of you high school kids could imagine, is, Skype, texting, emailing, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. Just keeping in touch with the students throughout to show them that, hey, we helped you get here. We're still here supporting you. We want to make sure that you graduate, and no matter what happens, your ups and downs, we're here to support you, and we're going to be with you the whole way.
So as we put together the BASIS program, we had to balance the idea of what we wanted to take from the original outsider success story and what we wanted to leave behind. And so Eve Burton, who's actually my mom, who you met earlier in the video, she was one of the biggest challenges to replicating the outsiders model. Because she acted like a super mom to all these 20 kids. And that went everything from buying snacks and Gatorades in between Saturday doubleheaders to actually adopting 2 of the players who actually became my brother late in high school years. And so as we try to replicate the model, hopefully all across the country in the decades to come, we really have to wonder about whether or not we can ask corporate partners and corporate champions whether or not they can be willing to adopt multiple kids on the teams we want to try to, work with. Another big challenge we had with replicating the outsiders model was that there was no real selection process for the outsiders. If you just happened to be playing in the South Bronx baseball field when a white kid, me, came and started playing that first day, you were automatically in the ecosystem. But the problem with that, the challenge with that, is that all the nonprofits that we met with in New York said you need to have some kind of selection process. Because the selection process is key in finding kids who work best with the model you're trying to establish and will most benefit from that. And finally, there's the challenge of the Hearst Super Mentors. And these were lawyers who worked for my mom, as you can see here. And they spent 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week both tutoring and mentoring of kids in this program. And that might be a challenge because the corporations or the partners who might not have the time to actually devote this kind of time at the corporate level to both tutoring and mentoring. And so at the end of the day, it comes down to balancing how much we want to take the outsiders approach and how much we want to create our own. And the outsiders model will save everybody and leave no man behind. But in the real world practical expectations that are necessary for a 21st century nonprofit.
So as you saw in all our other slides, especially with the high school, we had questions for the specific age group. But as we've gone through this process, in our 3rd week, we realized that there are a lot of open issues, a lot of the things that we still need to flesh out. And 2 of those open issues currently are separating our tutoring from mentoring. So as Cal mentioned, in the original Outsiders program, the mentors were also tutoring. And we have realized that we cannot expect that of our corporate mentors. And tutoring is a huge fish that we need to sort of flesh out a little bit more. And so what we're deciding right now is if we want to partner with possibly a university that has college students tutor the students, or if we want to just create pathways to other tutoring programs that are already out there. Our second open issue that we're still fleshing out is the community family involvement. We collectively fundamentally believe that family involvement has to be key in order for our program to work. However, we're trying to decide how much of a commitment we can expect of these families, how much we can demand of them to be there. We're also trying to decide with the community. Do we want to be based in the community with whom we're trying to help, or do we want to take the kids out of the community? Again, we fundamentally believe that the community has to be involved, but we haven't quite figured out how much involvement we need yet. But it's our 3rd week and we're still working, so we hope that hopefully this summer we'll figure that out.
So as Barbara touched on, yes, we are still in our infancy of our nonprofit life, so to speak. But we have set some lofty goals for this summer. Fortunately for us, we're lucky enough to have 3 of our team members working at Hearst this summer. And also one of the members of the original Outsiders, who I mentioned earlier, is graduating from Union. He has a 1-year fellowship at Hearst to help get this program up and running and off the ground. So we're really excited about that. So some of the summer goals that we've established going forward are going to be creation of our baseball camp, which we'll eventually use in our selection process. And that's going to be a very big one for us. The other one that we're really looking forward to tackling is going to be testing our model with different corporations and schools that we're interested in partnering with and kind of gauging their interest in our program. Now, I know that you all have been very patient listening. We've been talking y'all's ear off for about 15 minutes. I'm sure you all have some questions or something, so we'd love to open up the floor at this time. Yeah.
Thanks. I was just curious, I think you mentioned about using Catholic schools in your program, and also obviously with the goal of going to college. Both of those obviously require money to go to those schools, and I was just wondering what role the organization plays in either, I don't know if you guys are planning on helping give scholarships and stuff to these students or help them find financial aid for college. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a really good question, and that's something that we've been working on also. And so a little bit background, I'm from the Bronx, New York, and I went to a Catholic school, and I was a scholarship student. And so I have a first-hand experience of all of those questions that I'm going to answer right now. And the reason why we're selecting our students in the summer after their 7th grade year is because we want to help them go through the application process and also help them figure out the scholarships and things like that. Part of our summer goals is to figure out what these scholarship routes are and how much we can expect of the corporation partners also in combining with that. But we're definitely cognizant that these schools are going to be expensive and it's going to be a financial plan that we need to meet.
And just to add to that quickly, the Catholic schools, especially in New York, will run about $5,000 per year for any student. So that in terms of what we need to look to try to raise. But also, one of the benefits is the idea that the corporation kind of diversifies in terms of what we need money from, because when we ask the corporation, it will be more of time and passion as opposed to money. And so hopefully, we won't actually have to do everything in-house. And so by helping, having like a diversity of partners, we'll hopefully be able to lower the cost per student served.
Go ahead.
So as we mentioned, that's our job for the summer. We don't have a partner yet, and we're going to be, as we're presenting our project to you, we're going to be presenting our project to a lot of different corporations this summer and in the upcoming year to see if there are any corporations out there that are interested. Currently, Hearst has shown a huge interest in what we're doing, but we're hoping that Hearst is not the only corporation that we work with.
Do you have like a moral criterion for choosing the corporation that you allow on the program?
That's a good question, and we haven't thought about that, but we'll keep that in mind as we move forward.
And one thing that Posse does really well that we learned from them is that they create a feasibility study for any city that they want to expand to. And I think one of the ideas that we want to create is a rubric to try to look at what kind of things we were looking for in terms of corporations, in terms of time and personnel and what they're willing to offer.
And also, just to follow up a little bit, a lot of the organizations that we talked about having core values and following with everyone that is involved in the program. They having a really set core value list that they wanted everyone to follow through with. We haven't created our core values yet, but again, that was a really good question, and we'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
You spoke earlier about the need for a selection process to make sure that you're not just choosing these students randomly at the beginning. I was wondering if you could speak a bit about that selection process and what you did end up creating.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've discussed so far, and actually when we visited all those nonprofits in New York, there's kind of an overarching theme. When you're going through middle school, one of the biggest things and indicators for a child that's really motivated is somebody who, one, shows up to practice on time, because we're going to be using our baseball camp during the summer. So somebody who shows up to practice on time with all their gear ready to play, somebody who hustles for a ground ball or tries to beat the throw to first base or somebody like that, somebody who shows real motivation on the baseball field is more likely to show more motivation kind of in life in general is the approach that we're taking to term it loosely. So that'll probably be the basis of our selection process, but it's something that we're working on developing.
As you look to establish this organization in the community in New York, I think about having the blessing or the permission of that community that you're entering, and and making sure that the disruption you're providing is a positive one versus, a negative disruption. So how do you guys anticipate, coming into that community in a way that you're welcomed and that what you're providing and what you're doing is a positive change and an expected and anticipated change?
Thank you. That's a good question. As we said, we've been meeting with tons of nonprofits, and we're going to continue meeting with them. We want to make sure that this project is relevant, that it's necessary, and it's not going to be a negative disruption and not a positive one. So we met with Cardinal Hayes High School, which is a school we're hoping to partner with, when we were in New York last week. And this summer, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to summer baseball camps, summer baseball teams, and visiting with them and fleshing our idea, talking to them about our idea and asking them, is this something that's necessary? But again, as a person from the Bronx myself, who has been a program kid for a lot of times, I personally know that this is something that is necessary and that's something that people will appreciate. And so, but I also I hate when people come in and you're like, we're gonna offer you something because we think you need it, and which is why we've been very careful about asking. We're constantly asking questions. Can you clarify the question? Well, if you go to the Bronx and you ask so I grew up, most of my friends in my neighborhood were Dominican and Puerto Rican, and if you ask most kids what they want to do when they grow up, they would say, I want to be a baseball player, because the Yankees are down the street from most kids. And so, yes, there are a lot of baseball teams, but there's still a lot of players. And so that's never going to be, I don't think we're going to be stealing or taking the opportunity away from anybody else. What's that? Thank you.
I had a question. You said that the selection process was going to focus on kids that showed motivation. And my question is, if those kids already showed motivation, wouldn't it be more helpful to focus on kids who didn't have as much motivation to give them a better chance, because the kids that already had motivation would probably do some of the things that you're trying to enforce by themselves?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, actually. The thing is that we're looking for is that sometimes this might be an open-ended program. We are looking for kids that are showing motivation because if we're going to hire or talk to partner with a corporation that will provide mentors for us, we want kids that are motivated to show up to there. We aren't running a babysitting service sometimes. And so that's where the motivation is really key, especially at the younger years, because they're not only motivated to play baseball and do well on the baseball field, but they'll hopefully be motivated to do well in other aspects as well.
Just personally from my experience, with a lot of the kids that when I played, when you first meet them, that the motivation they show on the baseball field rarely correlates to the motivation that they show in school and in academics. And so the idea is that when we really first take the kids, that baseball in terms of priority is up here and school's down there. And so the idea is if we do our job to the best of our abilities, we do it right, hopefully by the time they're going to college, school will be a much higher priority. But it's a great point in terms of kids that we want to help. We're not trying to help kids who would already be on the track to go into college. We want to try to, raise that graduation rate in high school, in college, and high school. And so you're right. So hopefully we want to take kids who probably wouldn't have or might be on the fence about going to high school and college, and hopefully drive them through college.
Is this working? Okay. I have a question pertaining to the sort of corporation aspect of this, and the story you told of kind of like going through that building and seeing those guys in suits and seeing the waterfall and all that, and like that sounds really nice. But I also think I'm curious what your thought process is in seeing that as like the main goal that you're showing these kids, and kind of juxtaposing that in a harsh way maybe with like their reality, and I don't know like what the kind of values that you're instilling there, like how you're thinking about that.
Well, basically, our main goal of that is to kind of just open their eyes to be, to say the least, just open their eyes and show them that there is a possibility of the outside world. Like John was saying earlier from the Paul Tuff book, as long as you give kids this, you let them know that you can do more than what stereotypes think, just because you're underprivileged and all that. It doesn't mean that you're not able to achieve. Everyone's been getting personal right here, so I'm going to get personal as well. I come from Brazil, and when I got to America, I couldn't speak English, so obviously, as you can tell, that was pretty difficult. And My first year here was a struggle communicating, going from different schools. No one really knew what my problem was because they didn't realize I couldn't speak English and no one communicated that. So yeah, once I figured that out and once I got that one teacher who told me, hey, you're an intelligent kid, hang in there until you learn the language, and when you do that, I mean, now look where I am here talking to you guys, but it's just basically the principle of trying to open the kids' eyes and kind of introduce them to a different world.
One of the benefits we have is just that we know that this has worked because that was one of the things that we originally did back when I was in 7th grade, that we took a trip to the Natatorium in New York and then went to the Hearst Corporation. But the idea that I've seen it work and you build on that, that's only a foundation, it's only a stepping stone. I think you're right that it's got to be built on, but that also builds through high school and college.
And just a follow-up on that also, just to jump on your back a little bit, in a good way, not bad, right? In that we think, we're not saying that the corporate world is the only form of success that you can have, but we just, and if that's the idea that you got, then that's not it at all. But we just wanted to show them that that's an aspect of life that if they want, they can have. We just want to show them that there's just a lot more options. And again, we're starting them in 7th grade, and we're going to be going through high school, and there are going to be a lot of trips and a lot of different talks with a lot of different people. That's just going to be the first one that kind of just introduces them to what the program is. Yes.
Just to build on that, I've spent a number of years working in urban environments, and including Bronx, and my concern would be that showing people what they can acquire and have in contrast to their peers sets up a very different model from having them meet inspiring people who make change in the world and in their communities. And I would worry about a model that says you too can be wealthy and have power, as opposed to you too can make a change in the world.
I agree. I totally agree with you. But one of the things that we're also going to try to do is bring back the original outsiders who have shown that, they're capable. And the original outsiders are going to be kids who are just like them. They're all from the Bronx as well. So kind of being able to see someone who is like you, who's done it, and they're not all, extremely wealthy at this moment. Maybe they will be in the future, but it's just, like I said before, just showing them that, there's hope.
And again, just to follow up on it, that's not going to be, our goal is not to show them that corporate is right and that going into Manhattan is successful. We just want to introduce them to a lot of different things. And so, again, that was just one example that we gave, but I'm sure that as time goes, as the process goes on, they're going to be meeting with a lot of people. One of our hopes is that a lot of the mentors that they work with are people who are from where they're from and people who have become environmentalists or whatever else, so that they can sort of see that they can also achieve those goals if they have them and if they want to sort of go down that path.
And also it goes down to the really basics that the outsiders did was, teaching kids to show up on time, to be dressed properly, to speak, to not curse in an office, how to shake hands right. And those are skills that don't just pertain to Wall Street. Those are skills that you can take throughout your life and that will present yourself better no matter what community you're in.
Yes. Whoever has the mic.
Okay, just kind of going off that question, wondering, you're putting these students from the South Bronx into private high schools and four-year universities, which will most likely be predominantly white and affluent students. I'm wondering how you make sure that they keep that connection to their original community while they're at these schools, and make sure that they don't lose that in the process.
So that's one thing that we're hoping, as you saw in the graphic, that 9th grade, out of all the college years, has the most contact out of any of them. We're hoping to have our mentorship program kind of handle that problem as well, so that they are outside of that ecosystem that we established in high school and began establishing in middle school, and then continue to have them still involved through mentorship when they go to college, so that way, if they find themselves in a difficult situation, they can always reach out to somebody that they're familiar with back home.
But also, private does not necessarily mean white. I went to Catholic school, and most of the kids in my school were Hispanic and Black and Latino. And so I just want to unpack that statement a little bit and just move away from the concept that just because it's private, it's going to be white and it's going to be affluent. That's not necessarily the case, and there are private schools in the Bronx. So we're not taking these kids outside of the Bronx when it comes to school. They're going to be in the Bronx, but they're going to be in a different kind of school than maybe public school. Did that answer your question? And if it didn't,
And just the support.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have support there. And that's something we didn't mention is also they're going to be going to their high schools in cohorts of about 5. And so no one is going to be in high school by themselves. And so they're always going to have someone who's with them and who sort of knows what they're going through.
I am a person that has a problem with the idea of like helping people out of poverty. And I see that your program is well intended and it is all great to bring people and to the kind of opportunities that we have here in Middlebury. But the question is, how does this translate into benefits to the community that they came from? So connecting back to what Billy Perry said last night, you should go to the root of the problem. So yes, it's great to help these kids, but what are we doing, or what could this program do to help attack the roots of the problem that have them in the situation in the first place?
So in our open issues, we did talk about having community involvement be something that we're still kind of working on. Like I said, we fundamentally believe that the community has to be involved and the families have to be involved in order for this to work. We haven't figured out exactly what we're doing yet, but we want the community to be somewhere where this program is based, and that it's not us taking them out of the community and saying what's good is what's not where you're from. We want to show them that they can always go back and sort of participate in that way. Again, it's week 3. We've been doing this for 3 weeks, so we have a lot of work to do, and we completely appreciate and understand that.
And also, a lot of the kids that we're serving, this might be the first time that anyone in their family has gone to college. So when you actually send that first person and graduate from college, you not only change their life, you change their entire family's life and for generations to come. And we saw that a lot of the outsiders, they originally came back and helped the community. So it's not like they went to college and then moved out and never came back. The idea is that when you create this family, this one team with one corporation, one or two schools, you kind of create this idea that when you have a family or a cohort, that the idea is that you don't leave your family behind. And the idea is that you come back to the community, really help out. And that's what we've seen with the original outsiders, what we're trying to replicate.
I'm going to add just a couple things to these wonderful questions. And I see there are a few more hands, so please benefit from the 6 bases leaders and ask questions as we go forward. But one person who really, I think, personifies the excellent question that Fernando just posed is Majora Carter, who's made a commitment to her community, who understands the power of leadership, but is of and from and of a community that she believes in. So she'll share much of that, I'm sure, tonight at 7:30 at Beach Chapel, and we're lucky to have her here. I'm going to say maybe 4 things. First, I'm blown away by what you did, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this room feels the same way. So thank you so much for presenting. Garrett, thank you. Fabulous.